they're not afraid to pinch your bum. They're not afraid to kind of touch you. They use that closeness to get too close. Like, it gets very, very uncomfortable. All around you, you're thinking this is a holy city. This surely should be one of the safest spaces in the world. There's much, much darker stories.
My parents went to the Hajj, they went to the pilgrimage. Before they went, they were given so many warnings about what they should do during the Hajj. And I witnessed the same thing when other people went to the Hajj. And there was one warning that stuck out so much, that women should be especially careful during the Hajj, and that my father should always stay very close to my mother and never let go of her hand. I remember this one conversation about cabs, about taxis. They were saying that my father should go in first and let my mother out first, because many things happen, like women being sexually harassed, having their belongings stolen more often, or even being abducted or something. Is that something that you know of?
Yeah, to be honest, it's something I know a bit too much of, which makes you really question like a lot of things. Because I've said this so many times. This amount of stories of women, even if, like, my dad had the same fears when we would go as a family, you know. So it becomes really kind of intense and awkward and dangerous, even when you're doing tawaf, like when you're circumambulating the Kaaba. Especially, like I said, in Ramadan times, it's like a mini Hajj at that point. So it's like the same amount of rush. But honestly, they're not afraid to pinch your bum. They're not afraid to kind of touch you, or you're in an abaya, but they use that closeness to get too close. Like, it gets very, very uncomfortable. And you're kind of in shock at that moment, because the Kaaba's here and you're here getting touched up by some man who's in ihram and supposed to be here cleansing his soul and heart and purifying himself. And you also don't feel like it's the right time to even tell the man or the person you're with, your mahram, because it's such a horrible thing to experience. But it happens all the time. Sexual harassment like that, also theft, you know, people who leave their shoes outside the mosque, they go missing. And again, all around you, you're thinking this is a holy city. This surely should be one of the safest spaces in the world. But no, it's got all of the same little ugly things happening that happen out in the rest of Saudi Arabia as well. I know so many stories where women have come back from Umrah and Hajj and just had these horrible stories, and they haven't even told their husbands or whoever they were with. And then obviously, like, there's much, much darker stories, which probably will very much kill the mood of this conversation. But even one of my own teachers from high school had like the most horrific experience happen to her, where she was in a taxi and the guy just took a detour and drove her into the middle of the desert and raped her and just left her there. And she somehow made it back. But all I saw of her was she came to school to collect her belongings and she just left the country. And you can't even imagine like what would have happened. And the fact that she just silently left the country, knowing there's no justice that she would ever get in Saudi Arabia, nobody would be held accountable, just speaks volumes. Sorry, AP, for killing the vibe there.
No, these are things that need to be said. I mean, this is something that even deserves its own talk. This should be separately addressed. I mean, I was a Muslim when I heard stories, when I heard little mentions of these things or little warnings of that kind, and I didn't even get it back then. And it's like, I feel like until after I left Islam, I didn't even perceive what, you know, it's just shocking back then when you are a Muslim, when you are religious and you value these things, you value, the Arabian lands, and you value the Kaaba and Mecca and Medina and all that. This is Islamically described as a safe place, you know, where you go for refuge. And then you think, wow, in that holy place, the holiest place of all, you have men everywhere or others everywhere trying to engage in extremely terrible behavior, in abusing women and abusing others, and in groping and rape and theft and all that. I didn't even get it back then. And only after I left Islam, I thought, wait a minute, what the hell?
Yeah, and unfortunately, you internalize it and you think, okay, this is just a woman and this is maybe something I have to deal with, you know. And I never had the audacity to tell my dad, just out of like, I can't even bring that to my lips. Like, what would he think and say? But obviously now I think completely differently. But at that point, you genuinely do think, okay, this is just something I have to deal with as a woman, but it's something I deal with alone. And because again of the context that's happening in, you're just doubly as shocked, right? You're like, I'm here as well on a pilgrimage. I'm here to get close to God, and this is like the antithesis of what I should be talking about here. And it just, as a woman, you really internalize these things. I think there are, like, you're actually probably people who have lived in Saudi Arabia, and the way we were taught, because if you go to an international school, up to a certain level, Islam isn't compulsory. Because of that, you have to, like, obviously my parents were adamant that we would all learn the Quran. We actually had a teacher come to the house. But again, the horror stories of what these men do when they come and teach kids at home is like, there's so many stories. Obviously, we'll get back to the point of this discussion, but yeah, all of these things definitely need to be discussed, and people, they need to come out in the open now.